what if I told you that confidence isn't something you're born with, but something you build? Have you ever wondered why some people walk into a room and command respect effortlessly, while others struggle with self-doubt? The secret isn't luck, talent, or even experience. It's mindset. The ancient Stoics, some of the greatest thinkers in history, mastered the art of unshakable confidence. They understood that true self-assurance doesn't come from external validation, but from how you see yourself and the world around you. In this video, we're breaking down 7 Stoic lessons that will transform the way you approach confidence. We'll explore how to silence self-doubt, take control of your emotions, and face fear head-on, so that no matter the situation, you'll walk through life with a kind of quiet, unshakable confidence that cannot be taken away. Stick around, because by the end of this, you won't just feel more confident, you'll be more confident. Number 1. Confidence comes from mastering your emotions. A modern-day Stoic understands that confidence is not about external validation, but about mastering one's emotions. In a world driven by social media comparisons, career pressures, and the constant bombardment of external expectations, it's easy to feel inadequate. But true confidence is rooted in an internal state, not in fleeting achievements or the approval of others. Seneca once said, "No person has the power to have everything they want, but it is in their power not to want what they don't have, and to cheerfully put to good use what they do have." This is the foundation of emotional mastery, understanding that your power lies not in controlling external circumstances, but in shaping your response to them. Imagine a person scrolling through social media, seeing others traveling, succeeding, or looking perfect in every post. A reactive mind feels jealousy or self-doubt, wondering why their life doesn't look the same. A Stoic mind, however, recognizes that much of what is displayed is curated and controlled. Instead of yearning for what they do not have, they focus on what they do possess, their unique journey, their personal strengths, and the ability to improve themselves. Confidence grows when you stop seeking fulfillment in things beyond your control and start appreciating your own progress. This mindset extends beyond social media. Someone facing rejection, whether in relationships, job applications, or personal endeavors, can spiral into self-doubt, questioning their worth. But a Stoic recognizes that rejection is simply an outcome, not a definition of their value. Their confidence does not waver because it was never tied to external approval in the first place. When you detach your sense of worth from circumstances you cannot control, no setback or criticism can shake you. Every moment becomes an opportunity to refine your character and exercise control over your emotions, making you more self-assured and resilient in an unpredictable world. Number 2, fear is just a phantom of the mind. Fear is a powerful force, but it is often an illusion. Most people hesitate to pursue their ambitions, speak their minds, or step outside their comfort zones because they imagine worst-case scenarios that never actually happen. As Seneca wisely put it, we suffer more often in imagination than in reality. The anxious mind creates endless scenarios where things go wrong, embarrassment, rejection, or failure, when in reality, these fears are largely unfounded. A modern Stoic recognizes that fear is not a reflection of reality, but a construct of the mind. Take someone who dreams of switching careers but is paralyzed by the fear of failure. They imagine themselves jobless, ridiculed, and regretting their decision. But if they step back and analyze their situation rationally, they realize that these fears are exaggerated. If they fail, they can learn and try again. If people judge them, it has no real impact on their life unless they allow it to. The true enemy is not the external challenge, but the internal resistance to taking action. Confidence is built not by eliminating fear, but by confronting it and seeing it for what it truly is, just a phantom of the mind. The Stoic approach to fear is simple. Act despite it. When you consistently step into discomfort, you realize that the worst-case scenarios rarely materialize. Even when they do, you are far more capable of handling them than your mind initially believed. Consider a public speaker who fears embarrassment. The first speech may be nerve-wracking, but over time they become accustomed to the stage. Each time they push through fear, it loses its grip and confidence takes its place. This is how a Stoic transforms hesitation into certainty by taking action, not waiting for fear to disappear. Fear is not a barrier but a signal, a signpost showing where growth lies. When you understand this, fear stops being something to avoid and becomes something to embrace. The more you confront it, the less power it holds, and the more unshakable your confidence becomes. Number 3. Self-worth is an internal judgment. Most people base their confidence on external validation, compliments, promotions, social media likes, but the Stoic knows that self-worth must be cultivated internally, independent of what others think. Marcus Aurelius put it simply, a person's worth is measured by the worth of what they value. If you tie your self-esteem to shallow things, wealth, fame, or other people's opinions, your confidence will always be fragile, fluctuating with circumstances beyond your control. A modern Stoic builds confidence by aligning their values with things that truly matter: virtue, wisdom, resilience. Consider an artist who creates meaningful work but receives little recognition. If their self-worth is based on external approval, they may feel discouraged, even consider giving up. But if they measure their success by their own dedication to craft, their confidence remains unshaken, no matter the response. The same applies to relationships. Many people seek confidence through validation from others, needing to be liked, admired, or accepted. But when you stop outsourcing your worth and instead define it by the depth of your character, you become untouchable. A Stoic understands that if they act with integrity and wisdom, they are already enough. They do not need constant reassurance. Their confidence is built on something no one else can take away, their own principles. This mindset is freeing. You no longer worry about whether people approve of you. You focus instead on living in alignment with your values. Confidence is not something you get from the world. It's something you cultivate within by valuing what truly matters. And when you do, no external setback, no criticism, no loss of status can make you feel less than who you are. Number 4, don't let criticism shake you. Criticism is inevitable. No matter how skilled, kind, or thoughtful you are, someone will always have something to say. Many people allow criticism to shatter their confidence, feeling personally attacked by every negative comment. But a Stoic sees criticism differently. As Marcus Aurelius put it, "If anyone can refute me, show me I'm making a mistake or looking at things from the wrong perspective, I'll gladly change. It's the truth I'm after, and the truth never harmed anyone." A confident person welcomes constructive criticism because they see it as an opportunity to grow. Instead of feeling insulted, they evaluate whether there's truth in it. If there is, they adjust and improve. If there isn't, they discard it without emotional distress. Either way, their confidence remains intact. Consider an entrepreneur launching a new business. They pour their heart into it, only to receive negative feedback. A reactive person takes it personally, feels discouraged, maybe even quits. A Stoic, on the other hand, examines the feedback objectively. Are there valid points that can help them improve? If so, they make changes. If not, they move forward. Undeterred, their confidence comes not from universal approval, but from their ability to learn and adapt. This applies to social interactions as well. Imagine someone insults you or tries to undermine your confidence. The Stoic response is not to retaliate or feel wounded, but to recognize that insults only hurt if you accept them. If someone called you a tree, would you feel offended? No, because you know you are not a tree. The same applies to baseless criticism. If it isn't true, it is meaningless. If it is true, it is useful. Either way, your confidence remains intact. A Stoic sees criticism as feedback, not a personal attack. They are not afraid to be wrong because their goal is not to appear perfect, it's to improve. And that mindset makes them unstoppable. Number 5. Preparation is the key to courage. Confidence doesn't come from arrogance, it comes from competence. The more you prepare, the more confident you become. Epictetus reminds us, difficulty shows what men are. How you handle challenges reveals your true strength. A Stoic knows that confidence is not a feeling, but a result, one that comes from preparation, practice, and discipline. Take an athlete preparing for a competition. If they train daily, push their limits, and refine their skills, they step onto the field with confidence. Not because they wish to be confident, but because they have earned it. Contrast this with someone who neglects training and hopes to perform well. No matter how much they try to think positively, their lack of preparation breeds insecurity. This applies to any area of life. A speaker who rehearses their speech repeatedly will walk on stage with a sense of control. A student who studies thoroughly won't fear the exam. A business owner who learns their industry inside and out won't feel like an imposter. Confidence is built in the hours no one sees, the late nights, the early mornings, the quiet, disciplined work. A Stoic doesn't rely on motivation or luck. They prepare relentlessly so that when difficulty arises, they do not falter. They see challenges as opportunities to prove themselves, knowing that every obstacle is a chance to grow stronger. Confidence is not about eliminating difficulty. It's about being so well prepared that no challenge intimidates you. When you adopt this mindset, fear disappears and confidence becomes your natural state. Number 6, control what you can, ignore what you can't. A modern Stoic knows that confidence comes from focusing only on what is within their control. So much of what people worry about, other people's opinions, unexpected setbacks, or the state of the world, is completely outside their sphere of influence. When you waste energy trying to control the uncontrollable, you feel anxious, helpless, and insecure. But when you shift your focus to what is within your power, you become grounded and confident. Epictetus put it best: make the best use of what is in your power and take the rest as it happens. Imagine a person preparing for an important job interview. They can't control whether the interviewer is in a bad mood, whether another candidate has more experience, or even whether the company ultimately chooses them. If they fixate on these things, they will feel nervous and unsure of themselves. But what they can control is how well they prepare, researching the company, refining their answers, dressing appropriately, and showing up on time. If they focus on that, they walk into the interview with confidence, knowing they have done everything in their power. The outcome may be uncertain, but their effort was within their control. This principle applies to social interactions as well. Many people lack confidence because they worry about how others perceive them. A Stoic, however, recognizes that they cannot control other people's thoughts, only their own actions. They focus on being kind, speaking honestly, and acting with integrity. Whether others approve or not is irrelevant. Confidence comes from knowing you have done your part and letting go of the rest. Life is unpredictable. Some things will go wrong. You will face rejection, failures, and unexpected obstacles, but none of that should shake your confidence if you have trained yourself to focus only on what you can control. When you adopt this mindset, you no longer fear uncertainty. You embrace it. You move forward with calm assurance, knowing that whatever happens, you will respond with strength. Number 7, speak and act with purpose. A confident person does not speak just to fill silence or act impulsively out of fear or pressure. They choose their words and actions with intention. Epictetus advised, "Let silence be your goal for the most part. Say only what is necessary, and be brief about it." This doesn't mean you should never speak. It means that when you do, your words should carry weight. Many people lack confidence because they talk too much, trying to prove their worth through excessive explanations or nervous chatter. But a Stoic understands that true confidence comes from restraint. They do not rush to respond. They listen, process, and then speak with clarity. Their words matter because they do not waste them. When they make a promise, they keep it. When they offer an opinion, it is thoughtful and reasoned. This principle applies equally to action. A person who constantly second-guesses themselves appears uncertain and hesitant. But someone who acts with deliberation and purpose commands respect. Consider a leader in a high-pressure situation. A weak leader panics, over-explains, or reacts emotionally. A strong leader pauses, assesses the situation, and then speaks with authority. Their confidence is not loud, it is steady. People trust them because their actions align with their words. A Stoic understands that confidence is not about proving yourself to others. It is about proving yourself to yourself. When you are deliberate in how you speak and act, you exude quiet confidence. You do not need to be the loudest in the room to be the most powerful. In fact, it is often the person who speaks the least but listens the most who carries the greatest influence. By embracing this philosophy, you naturally become more respected, more persuasive, and more self-assured. True confidence is not about saying more, but about saying what matters. It is not about doing more, but about doing what counts. When you live this way, every word and every action becomes a statement of your strength. Confidence isn't about arrogance. It's not about being the loudest person in the room or never feeling fear. True confidence comes from knowing what you can control, letting go of what you can't, and acting with purpose. The Stoics understood that confidence isn't something you wait for. It's something you cultivate through discipline, preparation, and mindset. If you found this video helpful, please like and share it to spread the wisdom of Stoic philosophy. Don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss future videos on Stoic living and personal growth. Thank you for watching, and I wish you strength on your journey.